I'm going to go through the AQA Combined Science Physics end of topic test on the topic of electricity, higher tier. This paper is out of 40 marks and has 10 questions. Question number 1. A correctly wired plug and cable connects a washing machine to the mains electricity supply. The washing machine has a metal case. A fault causes the live wire to make an electrical connection with the metal case of the washing machine. The earth wire is not connected to the metal case of the washing machine. Explain why it would not be safe for a person to touch the metal case. Now, why would it not be safe? Usually, if let's say that's the washing machine and there's a wire that connects to the electrical socket. Now in the electrical socket you got 3 outlets, right? That's the earth wire. Let's say this is the live and this is the neutral wire. So let me use a different color. So from here there's a wire that connects to the earth wire. From there that is connected to the neutral wire, and let me use a hookah. Let me use a green for the green wire would be the earth wire, and the blue wire connect the neutral. Now let's have a look at a simple electric circuit. Let's say that's the washing machine. The current goes in this direction, therefore this is the live wire, and it goes into the washing machine and comes out. So this is the neutral wire. Now if this is switched off, the live wire carries the current. The earth wire is connected to the earth. So if the live wire actually touches the metal circuit, metal cover of the washing machine, what happens is the current actually, instead of going through the neutral wire, it will go through the earth wire and it will discharge itself. Now when it does that, a really large current goes through, and it's usually protected by a fuse, and the fuse actually breaks when a large current goes through it. So the fuse is located in the live wire. Now if it's not connected to the earth wire, and if we touch the metal case, right? So if a person touches the metal case, what happens is, if there is no earth wire, then the current which is coming through the live wire will pass through the person and it will pass onto the earth. Now when that happens, the person is going to experience an electrical shock. If the person actually was wearing boots and then the current actually doesn't flow through him, then they are not actually going to feel the electrical current. So back to the question, explain why it would not be safe for a person to touch the metal casing. Right? First thing which most students usually get is the person could get an electric shock, or you could say they could be electrocuted. Now because the question is asking you to explain, you need to say why that will happen, right? Since the current would pass through the person. Or you could say, since there is a current in the person. Right? The idea is you need to explain that the current actually passes through the person. Next question. A student investigated how the current in a filament lamp varied with the potential difference across the filament lamp. So you've got the variable resistor here. The lamp and the power supply. Figure 2 shows some of the results. So at 0 potential difference, it starts at 0 potential difference and it's going in. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the current is going up in 0 0.1, 0 0.2, and it goes up to 0 0.23. Write down the equation that links current, potential difference, and resistance. The equation is V equals IR. That's it. That equation is there in the equation sheet, which most students usually get marks for. Determine the resistance of the filament lamp when the potential difference is 1 volt. So use the data from figure 2 above. We have to use this equation, V equals IR. Now, that's the potential difference, which is V. We are trying to find the resistance, so we need to know the current. Now, the current can be determined from the graph. So when the potential difference is 1, which is here, what is the current? Which is 0.08, I would say. Yeah, it's 0.08. 0.08. Now, the common mistake is that it's taking it as 0.8 rather than 0.08. So V equals 1, current is 0.08 times R. Rearranging the equation means R equals V over I, which is 1 over 0.08, which is equal to 12.5 ohms. Now, that's 4 marks for this question. Rearranging the substitution for the equation is a mark. Rearranging the equation is another mark. The correct current value is another mark, and the current answer is another mark. Now, what if you actually misread this value of 0.08? Then you would lose a mark. If you have actually rearranged the equation, let's say if you are, instead of 0.08, you took it as 0.8, the answer would be 125, or it will be 1.25, sorry, rather than 12.5. Next question. Figure 3 shows an LED torch. The torch contains 1 LED, 1 switch, and 3 cells. Which diagram shows the correct circuit in the torch? So here positive, and this is negative, positive, negative, negative. So negative and negative are next to each other, so that's incorrect. You have negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. Right? The battery arrangement is correct. The question is it correct for the LED? Now, remember in the LED, which has this symbol, let me redraw that. What does this symbol actually say? The symbol actually means that the current is going to flow in this direction. Now, remember the current flows from positive to negative terminal. So here the diode is actually connected in the opposite direction because the current is actually going in this direction, and when the current goes here, it's not actually going through going to go through the LED. So you've got positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, and the current would actually flow in this direction. When the switch is on, it'll go through the LED and back to the circuit. So the answer is C. Write down the equation which links charge flow Q, current I, and time T. So Q equals IT is the correct equation. That is in the equation sheet. The torch worked for 14,400 seconds. That's your time before the cells needed replacing. The current in the LED is 50 milliamps. 50 milliamps, you need to convert it to amps. So you divide 50 by 1,000, you'll get 0.05 amps. Calculate the total charge. So Q equals IT, 14,400 multiplied by 0.05. That gives you 720 coulombs. 720. Write down the equation that links current, potential difference, and power. Again, from the equation sheet, you should be able to find power equals the voltage multiplied by the current, potential difference multiplied by the current. A light bulb has a power input of 40 watts. So that's your power, that's your voltage. Calculate the current. So let's write the equation. E equals VI or IV. So that's 40 equals 230 times I. Substitute it and then rearrange it. 40 divided by 230 equals I, and that should give you 0.17 amps. 0.17. A student investigated how the resistance of a piece of wire varies with its length. Figure 4 shows the circuit used. Explain why the student needed to adjust the variable resistor each time she changed the length of the wire. Now, that's your variable resistor. Why do you need to change the value here? Now, this links to what happens in a wire, right? What happens to the current. Now, as the length of the wire increases, right, the resistance also increases, which means if you pass a big current through the wire, it's going to get hot. So you want to actually maintain that, make sure that the current is not actually large. Now, here in this experiment, what you're trying to investigate is how does the resistance varies with its length. So you are trying to change the length. You don't want to change too many variables. So explain why the student needed to adjust the variable resistor each time she changed the length. Now, the variable resistor is connected in series with the wire. The wire can be thought of as a resistor itself. So the potential difference, let's say this is 10 volts. If the potential difference across the wire is 5 volts, then the variable resistor will share the rest of the 5 volts. By changing the resistance here, you can actually change the voltage across the wire. Right? And you don't want a big voltage, because if you increase the voltage, the current also increases. So the first point is to say the variable resistor is used to change the resistance of the circuit. Right? Why are we trying to do that? Right? This is to make sure to keep the current the same. You're trying to control the current that is in the circuit. Why do we want to do that? Right? If the current increases, then that affects the resistance as well. We only want the length to affect, not the current. And a bigger current also means the temperature of the wire will actually increase, right? So the temperature of the wire is kept constant. So we use a variable resistor just to make sure that the temperature of the wire is kept constant. Another thing that we do is we usually switch off the circuit in between readings so that we make sure that the current is at room temperature while we're doing the experiment. The student recorded 3 measurements of the potential difference across the 0.1 meter length of wire. Calculate X. So remember, X plus 0.18 plus 0.15, all of 3 of them added and then divided by 3 is equal to 0.17. So rearranging it, X equals 0.17 times 3 minus 0.18 plus 0.15, and that gives you a value of 0.18. 0.18. Figure 5 shows the results for 5 different lengths of wire. It's a straight line going through 0 and it's diagonal. So it is a positive correlation. If you say positive correlation, you just get 1 mark. Here it's a 2-mark question. Describe the relationship between the length. If you say as the length of the wire increases, the resistance of the wire also increases, again, that will just give you 1 mark. For 2 marks, you need to say resistance is directly proportional to the length. right? So every single time you double, right, let's say for example 0 0.1, it is 0 0.18, and then if you double the length, then the resistance also doubles from 0 0.18 to 3.2, right? And if you look at the value for this 3.2, if you double that to 0 0.4, then you'll find that it goes to 6.4, right? Every single time you double one factor, the other factor also doubles. A student builds a circuit. The circuit is shown in figure 6. So what do we have here? It's a cell, voltmeter, fixed resistor, ammeter, and that is a light dependent resistor. So that's a resistor inside the circle, and this shows that that's light. So the question is asking, explain how the readings on both meters. What are these both meters? The voltmeter and the ammeter change when the environmental conditions change. Now, the ammeter measures current in circuit. The voltmeter measures PD, or potential difference, across the LDR. And the LDR resistance changes with light intensity. Right? Now, if you know all of this information, then it's easy to get the 6 marks. And that's one additional piece of information. How does the resistance change with light intensity? Now, if you remember the graph for this, if that's the light intensity, 0, and it's increasing along the x-axis, and if this is the resistance, at 0 light intensity, the resistance is really high. And as the light intensity increases, the resistance decreases. Right? Now, if you know that, then you can tie up all of this information. So what actually will happen? When the light intensity increases, the resistance across in this resistor will decrease. Right? Remember, when the light intensity increases, resistance decreases. Let me say that again. So when the light intensity increases, right? So I write it here, increased light intensity. What happens? Resistance in LDR decreases. If the resistance in the LDR decreases, then the voltmeter reading decreases. What happens to the current in the circuit? Now, you have fixed resistor and the LDR. If this resistance decreases, total resistance is the sum of these two resistors. So if this goes down, the total resistance of the circuit also goes down. When the total resistance of the circuit goes down, then the current increases. So the ammeter reading will go up. So let's write all of these bullet points. Right. Resistance of LDR changes when light intensity changes. Right. Generally, that's what happens. When light intensity increases, resistance of LDR decreases. Right. The overall resistance of the circuit decreases. The potential difference across the total resistance remains unchanged. That is coming from the cell. The current in ammeter increases. The potential difference across the fixed resistor increases. Now, I didn't mention that what happens. Right? So, if let's say this is 12 volts, when you decrease the resistance, let's say this was 6 volts and 6 volts at the start. If the resistance here decreases, then the potential difference will also reduce, let's say, to 4 volts. If that is 4 volts, now this has to compensate for that to make it up to 12. So it will actually go from 6 to 8 volts. That's what this point is actually saying. Potential difference across the fixed resistor increases. The potential difference across the LDR decreases. Reading on the voltmeter decreases. Potential difference is shared between the components in series circuits. The lower the resistance of the LDR, the smaller the share of the potential difference. Reading on the voltmeter decreases. Right? Again, I've mentioned it twice there. Figure 7 shows a current potential difference for a filament lamp. So what is happening in the graph? As the potential difference is increasing, the current is also increasing. Right? Remember, V equals IR. So the potential difference is directly proportional to the current. So initially it will actually increase, but the current slowly starts decreasing because now the resistance is increasing. The question is actually asking, why is the resistance changing? Right? So explain how the resistance of the filament lamp changes. First of all, let's address that. The current increases when the potential difference increases. Right? Now, when that happens, this causes the temperature of the filament lamp to increase. Right? When the temperature increases, the resistance increases. So the resistance increases. Next question. The current from an electric shock causes a person's muscles to contract. The person cannot let go of the electrical circuit if the current is too high. Figure 8 shows how the maximum current at which a person can let go depends on the frequency of the electricity supply. So the maximum current at which a person can let go. So if I take at 10, if the frequency is 10 hertz, the maximum current you will be able to let go is about 12 milliamps. And that's about 12.5. Yeah, so that's about 12. Now, In the UK, the frequency is 50 hertz. If it is 50 hertz, what is the maximum current at which you'll be able to let go? Which is, that is 7, 8, that's 9 milliamps. So the maximum current you would actually let go is 9 milliamps. Explain why it would be safer if the UK mains frequency was not 50 hertz. What if it was 100 hertz? That means if it was 100 hertz, then the maximum current you would not let go, right? Maximum current we can let go is about 16 milliamps, right? So any lower current, right, you would actually let go at 100 frequency. So at 50 frequency, you actually at the lowest current that you would actually let go of it. That's why it is better if it was, let's say, at a higher frequency or at a lower frequency. So it's a confusing question, right? If you don't try and understand what they're actually asking. 50 hertz has the lowest maximum let go current, which is 9 milliamps, right? Higher or lower frequency would allow people to let go at a greater current. A hybrid car has an electric motor and a petrol engine. The electric motor in the car is powered by a battery. To change the battery, the car is plugged to the main supply of 230 volts. The power used to charge the battery is 6.9 kilowatts. So if you multiply that by 1,000, you'll get that in watts. That will be 6,900 watts. That is usually a mark out of this 4-mark question. Calculate the current used to charge the battery. P equals IV. 6,900 equals current multiplied by 230. Substitution carries a mark. Rearrangement, I equals 6,900 divided by 230. That gives you 30 amps. A student built a circuit using filament lamps. Figure 9 shows a circuit with 2 identical filament lamps. This is the parallel circuit. Right? Remember, potential across lamp, because it's a parallel circuit, is equal to power supply. So if this was 6 volts, the potential difference across this lamp will be 6 volts and this will be 6 volts. Now the current is split in a junction, because these are two identical lamps, if I1 is equal to 3 amps, I2 is going to be 1.5 amps, and then I3 is 1.5 amps as well. So it splits equally, and then it rejoins back up again to form 3 amps. So compare the currents I1, I2, and I3. You could say I1 is greater than I2 or I3. I1 equals I2 plus I3. And the third bullet point you can actually say is I2 equals I3. There's very little words needed to answer this question. You can write it as an equation. That brings us to the end of the paper. Thanks for listening. I will see you in the next video.